folks, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of Prairie Ramblings. Today's nature sound is one that was taken directly off the land in which the interview was taken and the land that's spoken about in this podcast. It was recorded probably about a month ago in June. So right before summer, summer was kind of already in full spring here in Kansas, but right before things, really started to pick up, before the temperature really started to hit. Hope that you can enjoy the lovely sound of the crickets and the critters and the wind and everything. It's a pretty tame nature sound this week, but nonetheless, nature should always be appreciated. So this week we are talking with my dear pal and friend, mentor, teacher, Amber Lehrman. She is a permaculture connoisseur and has been just a really cool person to get to know and get to understand and get to learn from in the past few years for myself personally, and has a really great perspective on their land and what we can all do as a collective and just work together and, things like that in the permaculture world that I think is really great knowledge, and I'm really excited to be able to share this with all of you. Also bear with me a little bit. This is my second podcast episode and also my first interview that I've done for a podcast ever, so I'm a little scratchy with my conversational skills in the beginning. Just kind of like, this is a new form for me and I'm just kind of, getting started, so bear with me. But I think that all of you will enjoy and, stay tuned and enjoy the rest of today's nature sound and the interview today. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm glad we can talk today.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So please introduce yourself and some things that you are doing here in Kansas.
All right. So my name is Amber Lehrman. I currently live on and run Windstone Farms. So that's where we are today. I started my journey with permaculture, sustainable living, and all that good stuff when we moved to Kansas. A little before that, but mostly when we moved to Kansas to just a regular house in town, and started a garden and started growing our own food, trying to grow high-quality organic food for my then 2-year-old son, who is now almost 19. So it's been a few years.
Yeah, just a couple.
And that garden grew to encompass our entire yard, the entire front yards, backyard, side yard, and we were growing about 80% of our vegetables off of our lot. And somewhere in there, probably whenever we asked the neighbor if we could start gardening in part of their yard, we realized that we had really made a lifestyle choice.
Oh, yeah. You're in it for the long term.
And that what we wanted to do was really farm.
Yeah.
And so we started looking for land. We looked for a long time, several years before we found this property and bought it. And then we took the crazy wild step of deciding to build our own house ourselves. And so the house we're sitting in is a slip form stone and English timber frame structure that we built over the course of about 6 years. It took a very long time and a lot of work.
Yeah.
And now that it is done, this year really we've turned our attention to the plant and food producing systems.
Right.
I know we just took a walk around the farm.
Yeah.
So you've seen the first 100 fruit trees and the first installment of the swale water catchment systems and kind of the direction things are going here.
Yeah.
So what we're building is a mixed fruit, berry, vegetable, herb operation.
Cool.
And the kind of long view. We talk about in permaculture a lot that resilience comes from diversity. Mm-hmm. And so that applies to the enterprises we're doing here. And so we've got an enterprise that is a membership you pick, fruit, nut, berry, vegetable operation. There's another enterprise that is event hosting, so creating beautiful spaces on the farm that people would want to use for events. And then there's another component that is building a series of cabins around, especially back in the wooded acreage. There's 30 acres of woods here.
Oh, okay.
For a little bit of a secluded, tiny house-sized cabin. This is not a luxury structure.
Yeah.
But a place for people to get away.
Yeah.
And then also a place where people who come here to learn things, because as you know, I love to teach, right?
Yeah, right. I've learned from you.
Yeah, and so we plan to have a lot of workshops and things like that. And I would love to host like a full design course, PDC here. And so those cabins then become a place for people who are coming for class to stay. And so all of those become intertwined and synergistic.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the vision for where we're going. We've got a long way to go before we get there.
Totally.
But that's where we're going.
Time takes us everywhere.
Exactly. And so I hope that answered the question of who I am and how I got here.
Yeah.
I guess in terms of just general bio. So I'm an engineer by education. I've got a bachelor's and a master's in industrial engineering.
Awesome.
I teach the permaculture design course at KU.
Which
I
rocks.
may be co-teaching the same class in a 10-day intensive format at K-State this fall.
Oh, cool.
Pending enrollment. We're trying to see with coronavirus, enrollment is down and everything is crazy, but that may be happening, and then also through the Kansas Permaculture Institute. So I do a lot of teaching that way.
Yeah. And Kansas Permaculture Institute is also called KPI, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
That is correct. And you can find us on Facebook or our website, or we have an Instagram, but we're really terrible at updating it. So Facebook is better.
Yeah.
And you can also find Windstone Farms on Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome.
And our website is windstonefarms.net.
Awesome. Great. So what ended up happening because of coronavirus? One of my friends was actually enrolled in the course, and then coronavirus happened. What's your guys' steps now taking that further?
It is looking promising that we will be able to have the next spring class at Heartland Farm, which would have been the one she was enrolled in.
Okay.
So just skipping a year, basically.
Yeah.
But with the age of the sisters, we could not risk bringing... Like, the youngest of them is 68.
Oh, my. Yeah.
We could not risk bringing people to Heartland Farm in the middle of a pandemic.
High risk.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but next year, we're hoping things are settled and we'll be able to do that. The one at K-State this fall that I was talking about is a partnership between K-State and KPI. And so it's, if you remember Carol Barda... Maybe
not really.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's another one of the teachers for the KPI classes.
Okay.
And I are teaching with one of the professors at K-State. So that's the 3-teacher group for that one.
Okay, cool.
And it's structured a little bit more like the KU class in that you can enroll for it as a college class. But the partnership means you can also enroll through KPI and pay tuition that way. And it ends up being a little less expensive, but you don't get college credit, right? So there's trade-offs.
Yeah.
Depending on what you need. And so I think that's the plan. We haven't posted the dates for it next spring, but I expect it'll be April, May, and June.
Okay, cool. That's exciting. That's something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what does, for someone who hasn't gone through permaculture, is interested in permaculture, what does it look like to like enroll in either like the courses or enroll in like that program? Like for the Kansas Permaculture Institute, at least specifically, what does that dynamic look like for someone?
So you would go to the website and fill out a registration form, and there's a deposit. It's a flat $250 deposit. The cost of the class, it's posted with each on the website what the final cost is, and it depends on the venue basically for how much we're getting charged.
Yeah.
And then the Heartland Farm class is 3-3-day weekends. And so we start on Friday morning and we finish on Sunday evening. 3 weekends, 1 a month for 3 months is the structure. So it's like 9.5 days with some homework and webinars that you do in between.
Yeah.
And similar to your class, being half class and half field, we try and do the same thing, but it's a lot more fluid.
Yeah.
So it might be an hour kind of in a classroom and then an hour out walking around and seeing, and we've got a lot more flexibility in the schedule. So it's not just 3 hours and then a different 3 hours.
Yeah.
And so that's nice. We've got a lot more freedom. We bring in instructors from around the bioregion, and so like I'm one of them. Carol Barta from Manhattan is another one. And then Ben Stallings, who currently lives in Nebraska but lived in Emporia, Kansas for a long time.
Yeah.
Did
he focus on soils?
Yep.
Okay, that was really cool. That really stood out to me.
Yes.
Because I feel like it takes a certain type of person to like really get into soil.
Oh yeah.
And he is really into soil, and that's really cool because what is the one structure that everything grows out of is soil.
Exactly.
Like, we should be more focused on soil than what is like coming out of it, you know?
Yeah, and he does an awesome job. Yeah. As you know, I have him come do the KU one because I cannot teach it as well as he does.
Yeah, and I remember he brought so many books, and I have like 2 or 3 photos of all the books that he had, and I was just like, man, I should probably read all these books. This is great.
Yeah, Ben is awesome.
Yeah.
And so it's a really intensive format. So I think compared to like the KU class that you took, that is Thursday nights and Saturdays over an entire semester, right? The advantage of the intensive format is I think you do bond with the other students more because you like live with them for 3-day weekends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or like the case for 10 days straight, you're just living with these people.
Yeah.
And so you do get a little more of that social cohesiveness over the course of the class. But the trade-off there is the KU class has more time. Like there's just more interaction time, so I get to cover a little more in that permaculture class. I go a little deeper in some of the design things and some of the more general concepts. Like I've just got time.
Yeah, which is really great.
To show you guys more stuff.
Yeah, totally. And I think it was taking the permaculture class through university was really cool because usually like those kinds of things are seen as like fun projects to do in the community, which they are, but like it was great to have a university allow that and like be able to recognize that like this is something that needs to be taught. Absolutely. And like also find other students that are either younger or older of all age ranges that can come together and learn this class together. And people who are like when you're in that stage of college, it's like I have the whole world ahead of me, right. And then to do that and then learn this is that was really, really awesome. Cool. Yeah,
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It was fun having you in class.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you guys come about finding this property that we're on, which is in Perry, Kansas?
It was an ad in the Trading Post. So we had been looking at property for 7 years.
Oh my gosh.
We'd actually bought acreage in Arkansas, 40 acres in Arkansas, because we thought we would move back there. Because we still had friends there. I'm from Arkansas originally. We met at the University of Arkansas, Jeremy and I.
Yeah.
And we discovered that the long-range farming was not working, and that rural Arkansas has a cultural legacy that we did not appreciate.
I could assume that.
Yes, and so we sold that place, but over the course of before we bought that one, and then after we sold it, before we bought this one, it was 6 or 7 years of looking. But we found an article in the Trading Post for 40 acres near Lawrence, and called them up, and like as soon as we walked it, we knew. We're like, this is the place.
Here.
Yeah. It's like, I guess sometimes the land just speaks to you.
Yeah.
But it was for both of us. Like as soon as we set foot on it and walking around, we were both like, no, this is it.
Yeah.
Like this is the one.
Yeah.
This is the place.
Yeah. And especially for for Kansas, like there is so much texture to this land that is like not found elsewhere, and that is so cool because like around here it's very plains, and you can't find a lot of like of that diversity of like just texture, you know?
Yeah, there's from the high point of the property. So I guess for those who haven't just walked around it, the property is 1/8 of a mile wide and 1/2 a mile deep. So it's got 1/8 of a mile of road frontage, and then it goes back away from the road for 1/2 mile. The front 1/8 of a mile by 1/8 of a mile, so 10 acres-ish, is open and cleared, and it has the highest point on the property on that, the ridge line. From that ridge, it drops, I think it's 45 feet to the road going west, but it drops 200 feet to Buck Creek going east through the woods. So that part is 30 acres of woods. Yeah. All very rocky and diverse, and I love it. Like it feels like Arkansas, which is probably why this place felt good to both of us.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it does have a lot of that.
Cool.
The flip side is I don't have those super deep, loamy Kansas soils that you get in the river bottoms. You know?
That everyone's like, oh,
exactly.
This is great. You can grow anything in it.
Exactly. So the soil is good, but it's not, especially up on the higher areas, it's not that deep.
Totally.
And it does have a fair amount of rocks. So it's a different set of challenges. But that's what it's all about. As you partner with the land you have.
Work with what you can find, and with soil development you can always develop the soils more, and with soil development I feel like it's just time and it's just patience and making sure you have the right components together in order to make it healthy. But that's really cool. So you came from Arkansas, you went to school in Arkansas, and then you came to Kansas just on a whim, or like how did that all come about?
Well, we took a detour to Pennsylvania. And so Jeremy and I met at the University of Arkansas. He was 2 years ahead of me, so he graduated and we got married between my sophomore and junior year of undergrad. And then we went from there to Penn State, Pennsylvania, when I graduated, and I got a master's from Penn State.
Oh, right. Okay.
And then when we were looking for jobs, we wanted something closer to our families. So Jeremy's family's in Wichita, my family's various places in Arkansas.
Okay.
And I ended up getting a job at Hallmark Cards in Lawrence.
Cool.
Knew nothing about Lawrence, nothing about Kansas, but I'm like, it fits the bill, and they offered me a job. So I guess we're going to Kansas.
Yeah.
And then fell in love with this community.
Oh, totally. So easy to do that in Lawrence.
It is an amazing community of folks, especially if you're interested in alternative, food systems, alternative anything, really.
Yeah.
And just people who are open-minded and accepting and diverse and just wonderful.
Yeah.
And so we haven't left.
Well,
we landed here and we haven't left.
I hope you wouldn't leave this property.
We're not going anywhere.
No. Yeah, that's really great. I've noticed that a lot with people, and I have some friends that have left Kansas, and then they always end up coming back, or at least Lawrence.
Yeah.
Because it's so special, and it's a place that you can leave and then come back to and know that, like, people, there's still going to be those same people here that love you, and, like, this city will still open you with, like, good arms. And
absolutely.
That's really awesome.
Yeah. And as I've grown in permaculture and my knowledge and working with plant systems, one of the coolest things in Kansas in general, but especially the eastern half of the state, is the diversity of biome.
Yes.
Like everything in Arkansas is a forest.
Yeah.
It's all a hardwood forest unless it had been clear-cut and planted to pine, and then it's a pine forest. It's all a forest.
Wow.
And, you go east, and it's all woods. The native biome is forest everywhere. But within 150 miles in Kansas, you go from forest to savanna to prairie.
Yeah.
And there's just so much living diversity in that.
Right.
And it's really uncommon, I've found, in the permaculture community to have ecological knowledge of savanna and prairie.
Yeah.
Like it's all food forests. You plant trees in permaculture.
Yeah.
I'm like, but sometimes that's not the biome you're in.
Yeah.
Like I'm planting trees. I'm in the forest half of Kansas. I am.
Yeah.
So I am planting trees here. But like you go to Manhattan and it's like, that's not necessarily the biome that's appropriate.
Yeah.
That's not the set of permaculture techniques that are appropriate and management techniques that are appropriate.
Yeah.
You know,
and even further west from that, it just turns into a complete dust bowl, you know, and then you hit Colorado and it's a whole different landscape. But like, it's crazy to like think about that in one state that is normally thought of as like, oh, it's all plains. It's like, no, there's a lot going on here just below the soil, you know.
Exactly.
It's like, that's
pretty awesome.
That's really, really neat. So you got your permaculture degree or like teaching, or how like where did that come about?
Midwest Permaculture.
Okay.
And so I had been learning about permaculture as an offshoot of gardening, like reading books on permaculture, you know, Guy's Garden, all the classic books, and trying things out on our garden in town at the time.
In Lawrence?
Yep, in Lawrence. Yeah. And decided that I wanted to do a design course. And so saved up for it and saved up the vacation, and I took it at Midwest Permaculture. It's in Illinois in 2014.
Okay. And so was that before KPI was born?
KPI existed. I was not involved with the organization at the time. Okay. Not yet.
Yeah.
Like, I knew they were out there, but honestly, we were working on the house. We bought this place in 2012. And so 2014, like, the house hadn't really completely hit crunch time, but we were very busy doing things, and I just kind of quit all organizations for a while. Yeah. Because I didn't have time.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. You're building a house.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that continued until, well, when I started teaching at KU, basically. 2017, that was one of the first getting back out into the worlds.
Cool. Yeah.
That I did.
I'm sure that was nice.
Oh, it was awesome.
Yeah. Absolutely awesome. You got your certificate, and then how did you level up almost into like being able to like teach more?
So I think, well, officially, globally, the only thing you need to teach a permaculture design course is a permaculture design certificate.
Right.
It's a very flat, like, there's no organization. Take a test. That's all it takes.
Make the design.
Right. I think for me, getting comfortable with it was about, okay, how many of the things that we talk about in class have I personally done and tried and had that lived experience with? And, you know, how many more of them have I seen and interacted with, even if I haven't done the whole thing? And like, how much of this curriculum do I feel comfortable really coming to with deep experience? You know, with some level of experience.
Right.
And I don't know, certainly by the time Steve Mooring was in ill health and was looking for someone to take over the KU class, I had some pretty solid experience with the majority of the class. And so it felt like an easy transition. A lot of work on the front end, just organizing my own thoughts. And permaculture is this giant, huge topic that touches every part of life. Like how I organize that. Because it is a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle choice. It absolutely is. And it's like, well, how do I organize that? So that first semester was a little intense, but in a good way.
Yeah, totally. That's really cool. I've heard some great things about his name's Steve, right? Because you were my teacher, obviously, and I remember a friend was in the last class with him, and just saying that they were like, you know what? I know, you know, he's probably going to be passing soon, but like it's gonna be great. It's gonna be in good hands. So I was like, great. So I'm sure it's nice to know that. So I know we touched on like the Lawrence community, but how do you think the Lawrence community has gotten more involved throughout the years within like KPI and like here with it's Windstone, and just like that in general? How do you think like the community has gotten more involved within the last few years?
Well, that is an interesting and diverse question. So I think,
because community is something that is really important within permaculture, and
it definitely is.
It's something, you know, you want to share your knowledge, you want to teach, and like community is an aspect of it, and like how's that like evolved over the years?
So I think there's two parts to that. And so for KPI, I think we have had an increase in engaged people wanting to help us do things. And so like in the last year, we've offered way more workshops and classes and events and things than we have before. Before the coronavirus, we had a schedule through almost the end of the year with something happening every month in the organization. And not because one person was just like, I'm doing something every month, but there were enough different people. Cool. And so with that comes a lot of engagement. Right? And a lot of interactions and a lot of outreach. And so all of that's been wonderful. And I think that's going to continue as we come out of lockdowns and quarantines. All of those ideas are there, and all of those teachers are there, and all of that is there.
Yeah.
So we're going to keep
Nobody's
going.
leaving. Yeah.
Right. And then, of course, technology has let us reach out a lot more. And KPI really began in the Lawrence area, and it was a group of people really in southern Jefferson County and in Lawrence proper, getting together periodically to just have a potluck and talk.
Yeah.
Like, we're doing some stuff that most people aren't doing, so let's get together with people who are doing the same crazy stuff.
Like-minded individuals.
Exactly, and let's have a conversation, right?
Yeah.
And we still have roots that way here, but we are trying to be more deliberate about reaching out to western Kansas and northern and southern, and kind of expanding what we have to offer to more than just the immediate Lawrence community.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one part of the community interaction.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, of course, we're a nonprofit, so our whole board is just community members who wanted to help.
Right, which is great.
Yeah. The other side of it is that locally we have, like, we call it the North Village.
Yes, I've heard of this term.
Yes, and so it's just a group of people living more sustainably in southern Jefferson County. And we are almost all Lawrence expats who came here for a lack of building codes and less expensive property. Mm-hmm. And so you look at Tim O'Brien and, Sweet Love Farm, Phil and, I'm blanking on his wife's name, but the Holman Heberts.
Yeah.
Dan and Amy Saunders and, all of these farms, and Sacred Son too, where you are. And so that community has its own set of potlucks that happen and events that happen and our own listserv, and like a lot of sharing goes on that way. And I think within that community are a lot of people who have helped here and been very involved in Windstone, and that we've helped. Like we helped raise the same kind of timber frame that's here at a house down and around the corner. Cool. Dave and Aaron Schmidt's house. Cool. And helped them get their roof on. And they came out when it was time to raise our timber frame and helped us do that. And so did Tim O'Brien, came out and taught Jeremy how to do the joinery. And then when we were ready to raise the frame, he came out and helped put it up. And so we've had a lot of help, I guess, from that larger community. Yeah. And even if it's not direct help, just being like, so I need to not be on the farm tonight. Yeah. What you doing? Yeah. Like, I need help to walk with the project. Away from this. Yeah. I need to clear my mind. I've been doing building. Yeah. I get that. I need to not be here. Yeah. And that kind of community is huge.
Oh, totally. And it's really great to have that. And it's cool seeing that as someone who's lived in town and now moved out of town, and like seeing all of that happen, it's like, oh my gosh, this is great. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, neighbors helping neighbors.
Yeah. What was that one farm we went to that was the straw bale? Was that here in like the North Village?
Yes. So that was Dave and Aaron Schmidt's.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, I remember seeing that, and that was like mind blowing. It's crazy. Natural homes, like, they look like you wouldn't have even known that it was what it was. It's like, what? This is made out of straw? What? Are you kidding me? Yeah. Yeah. That's really, really cool. And it's cool that we can do that here in Kansas, and
definitely
in the middle of the United States, that people think is like there's nothing going on. It's like, well, we just did this. So
so there.
Super cool. So one topic that I want to like try and delve in a little bit more is just like the topic of sustainability. And I know that word has a lot of different meanings and a lot of different contexts, and people can see it in a ton of different ways. But how do you personally like view sustainability and like sustainability systems and like sustainability lifestyle? I know there's a lot to unpack there, but like I feel like it's a really big topic, and sometimes it can be perceived as something that it's not.
So okay, you're going to see a theme. I have two answers. So
as
a general like overview, if I were going to define sustainability, I would say that word doesn't go far enough. Yeah. Like, we cannot sustain where we are now and survive as a species.
Totally.
And so what really has to happen is regeneration and very active resequestering of carbon out of the atmosphere if we're going to survive as a species. And I know that like just deep dived into a bunch of science and like intense stuff, but that is our reality.
Totally.
And so my view of sustainable living is that what we need is a much more radical change than what most mainstream voices are talking about. But what I don't believe is that has to bring human misery.
Yes.
Like, I think there's a lot of perception that if everyone is going to live sustainably, then we're all living in mud huts and starving.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is just not real.
Yeah,
like,
come
that's
on.
not what this means.
Yeah.
At all.
Right.
And so there's a lot that we can do as a species, as a community, as individuals, to live more appropriately within the Earth's resources. And so this kind of gets into the second part. Like we've talked about, our farm's multiple enterprises, and we're based on permaculture principles, but overriding all of that is we will be carbon negative. Like, all in, including transportation, people coming here to get fruit, all in carbon negative.
Yeah.
And like, that is an absolute ethic, because we must sequester carbon as a species.
Right.
And ethically, I can't advocate doing things that don't do that. Like creating a farm that isn't going to do its fair share. Mm-hmm. I was actually this morning doing the math on what exactly is my fair share of that.
Yeah.
And it's about 200,000 pounds of carbon.
Oh my gosh.
That needs to go into the soils here.
Yeah.
The soils and living biomass.
Wow.
For me to do my part here on this 40 acres to reverse climate change, to bring carbon levels back to their pre-industrial levels.
Wow.
Yeah, like, it's a lot.
So can that be done through like planting trees and like specific things, or like how can that carbon sequestration, like that number, like how can that be dealt with?
So there's a lot of parts of it. Some of it is absolutely planting. Like, anytime you increase the living biomass in a place, then you are sequestering carbon. Trees are made of carbon. And when you have more trees, you are sequestering more carbon. Living roots in soil is carbon. Decaying roots in soil is also carbon. Anytime you increase the amount of life in a place, you're sequestering carbon.
Cool.
And I think that's really awesome.
Yeah.
It's like, so the answer is, I need more beautiful living things all around me all the time.
Yeah, sold. I'm in.
And it's like, that is literally a healthy chunk of the answer.
Yeah.
And so that is a lot of, planting the tree systems here, because I am in a tree biome.
Yeah.
If I were in western Kansas, it would be intensive grazing systems, like savory method, holistic grazing systems to promote deep-rooted perennial grasses. And a lot of the carbon sequestration in a grassland is actually in the bodies of those herds of grazing animals, which most people don't grasp.
Yeah.
But it is. Anyway, so we digress. So that's part of it. Another part of it is active, semi-permanent carbon storage. And so that's biochar. And so it's saying deliberately growing woody plants that I have to prune. And so like the hazelnut circle that we walked through, hazelnuts must be cut every 10 years or they lose productivity. Like, you must thin them to maintain productivity. Yeah. So part of planting them is, you get the nuts, but I'm also generating a consistent supply of woody biomass. And that biomass will get charred, which means that 80-90% of the carbon that's in it will be transferred chemically into a form through heat that is stable for thousands of years. And then that will get put in the soil. And that is a literal, like, if I take a ton of wood and I get 1,800 pounds of biochar, I put 1,800 pounds of char in the soil and it is done. That carbon is no longer in the air. Yeah. And it's not going back.
Yeah.
That's cool. And so there's a lot of intentional design in what we're planting and how we're managing it to do that kind of basically permanent sequestration. Yeah. And then also modeling a lifestyle that is carbon negative and saying, great, you're in a house. This is not a mud hut. Yeah. Right?
There's water.
Right, exactly. We have running water. We have electricity. We're off-grid solar. The average electric usage for a household in the U.S. is 30 kilowatt hours a day. We use 4.5.
Wow. 4.5. And normally is 30.
Yeah, and that's our family of 4. Right? That's all 4 of us living here.
Right.
And so but it's not a hardship. you know?
Yeah.
Like we do have to think about it.
Yeah.
Like, I have a coffee maker. When we have cloudy days, I don't get coffee. Like, that's just how that goes.
Yeah.
I have to wait till I go to work.
Yeah.
But
you will survive.
Yes. Yeah, I need to get a stovetop coffee maker is actually what I need to do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's not a bad life at all.
Yeah.
And so that's another component of what we're trying to do here, is to say, you know, a carbon neutral, carbon negative lifestyle isn't bad. Like, I get good physical activity, I get fresh air, I get surrounded with beautiful forms of life. I was watching a zebra swallowtail this morning while I was filling up a water bucket, just fluttering around.
Yeah.
You know, we walked by all the prairie wildflowers.
Oh, yeah,
There's
beautiful.
something blooming all year long. It's a beautiful life.
Yeah.
It's different, but it's a beautiful life.
Yeah.
And so we want to be able to show that.
Yeah. And it's so abundant, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like there's so much abundancy in here.
Yeah.
And like, even though you know, so I feel like I've had thoughts of like, oh, if you have solar, like, you can't have this, you can't have that. It's like, what?
Mm-hmm.
No, like, it's extremely abundant with or without, you know, and it's great that, like, that's where you guys are at, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, it was really cool to see the actual abundancy outside in nature. It was so beautiful. So many different plants, so many,
Mm-hmm.
you know, prairie natives and all the trees and the swales, and it's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Lots of really
that.
great work has been put into here.
It has been a lot.
You can tell. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about swales a lot. What's the benefit of a swale, and what's the negative of a swale? I know this, but for the listener.
Right. So a swale is a ditch dug on contour. So the bottom of the ditch is level all the way around. So for anyone who didn't already know what a swale was, that's what a swale is.
Yeah.
So when you put them on a landscape that has soil retention issues, so like ours we started at the top of the ridge. So that's the driest place on the landscape. The water wants to run off down the hill to someplace flatter and lower. Mm-hmm. And so when we put swales up there and we hold the water, right? So the swale fills up, you know, that ditch fills up with water, and the water stays there until it soaks in the ground.
Yeah.
So by doing that, we capture literally tens of thousands more gallons of water into that soil profile than would have been there otherwise. Because that water, if it ran into the swale, it was going to run all the way down the hill. Mm-hmm. You know, and that soil wasn't going to get a chance to capture it. So once you introduce water, the roots will follow the water. Once you have roots, you have soil biology. Once you have soil biology, you have pore spaces. Now you have better water infiltration. It'll soak through more water. Mm-hmm. You're sequestering more carbon. You're creating more a more healthy soil biome, and so the plants are growing better. Like, it's this compounding effect by holding the water in place long enough for that to happen.
By that one swale.
Yeah, and so those are all the advantages. And so we have the swales focused around our tree systems, so increasing the moisture in the soil profile for those trees is a huge focus, because obviously we have droughts in Kansas. Obviously there are dry periods, and the fruit trees need water.
Yeah.
And so those are all kind of benefits and why we have them where we have them and all that. There are times where swales are not the right thing. So on steep slopes, swales become unstable and can lead to sudden failures.
Yeah.
There are some soil types and underlying rock types where a poorly placed swale system can overhydrate a soil profile and cause a mudslide. Now that's not, we have enough clay in Kansas, it's not prone to that. But like in California, you have to be much more deliberate in how you would do a swale system.
Yeah.
And there are places where the rock is just too close to the surface. Like for us, there's a place going down the hill toward the road where there's too much surface rock. Like, I couldn't dig a swale there if I wanted to. Yeah. And there's just no point.
Yeah.
Right, so there's a lot of cases where they're not appropriate.
Right.
But where they are, they can do amazing good things.
Yeah. And it was crazy because we haven't had rain for, a week and a half?
At least.
Maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And this one swale still had water in it. And it's been like almost 100 degrees, you know, ever since then. It's like, that's absolutely bonkers that it's just like, it turns into like a little ecosystem too for other insects and things like that can, you know, feed to the ecosystem that it's living in, which is like another benefit of having a swale, which is awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So maybe we could talk about the at the top of the ridge you had that tree, the hazelnuts, and just that symbolism there that we were talking about earlier.
Sure,
I think that was really, really cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about wanting to have event spaces and places that people want to go as an intentional focus of the farm. And so one of the first ones we've done is a circle that's 70 feet in diameter, and it will have a hazelnut hedge around it. So you will see it as a circle with bushes 8 feet or so tall, densely planted around. There are 4 gaps in that circle at exactly solar north, south, east, and west. And so it's set up so that if you stand in the middle of the circle on the equinox, the sun rises through the east gate and sets through the west gate. And solar noon on the solstices is, in the line going from the north to the south. The sun is above you there.
Yeah.
So incorporating that seasonal symbolism and kind of honoring the circle of the seasons, which is the circle of life, which is the circle of the year and the day, and like it's all there. And so creating that space at the top of the ridge, the highest point, it's one of the things I've enjoyed most that we've done this year. Yeah,
totally. I think that's really, really cool. I think what's really great also, in addition, like with that and with permaculture design, is that you can, you have the freedom and the ability based on your space to do some of those things and have that, be able to sit on the land, understand what you're working with, and, come up with these great ideas and cultivate them and, create them.
Yeah.
There's been some really great permaculture designs that I've seen, but this is a really good one.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. How do you see like other designs like moving forward? Like where do you get where I know you're analyzing the land and this and that and like making the swales on the contour and like things like that, but are there other aspects that you use to like create these designs that you've been making and like things like that, or like just working with you, God, or like what's the depth behind that
for this property? There's a lot of iterative design, and I would say that we probably mapped out these swales 4 or 5 times before we were actually like, no, really, this is the right place.
Yeah.
And it's looking at like access patterns and planting patterns and saying, well, you might have noticed that in between 1 and 2, those 2 rings, there's a wider gap in the trees. And that's so that we can drive a truck through. Because if we have to water those trees, we got to carry the water on a truck. That's just where our system is. And being able to move fruits or people or mulch or things like that. So there's an access pattern there that we needed to maintain in the planting. And that determined the spacing of the swales ultimately, because we wanted to have a certain number of tree rows between the swales, and we needed that access pattern.
Cool.
And so 3 and 4 that aren't planted around yet, right, the October and August sections, are spaced that same way.
Okay.
And so we measured out, okay, there'll be a tree row here, drive space here, tree row, and therefore the swale must be here. And so up here we kind of have that mapped out. On the lower field we don't as much. We're still playing with it, and so we literally go out with the laser transit and some flags, and we put some flags in the ground and say, well, what do we think, and how does this go? And we take some measurements and we ponder and we come back to it and we ponder and we leave and we ponder and we say, well, but maybe it needs to be like this, and then we map it again, and then and just keep that conversation going. To try and think in advance of as many things as we can. And then at the same time, kind of in parallel, I've got spreadsheets and notebooks and all these things of, these plants ripen at these times, they need to be in these areas, they work well with these other plants, and these are kind of the groupings, and, kind of doing that conceptual work.
And like the forest layering system as well, the canopies.
Exactly. Thinking through the guilds of okay, well, gooseberries ripen in early June at the same time as mulberries, and gooseberries and mulberries can be planted together, so that's a good guild. So I can plan on eventually propagating the gooseberries to go with the mulberries I'm going to propagate from those ones that we had mulberries this morning from.
Yeah. Delicious.
Right, and so looking toward what is the plant matter, right? Because the sheer volume of plants required, like when we walked by Catherine's garden, right? There's 500 plants,
Right.
understory plants. That doesn't count the trees in that garden, and it's a tiny little space.
Yeah, totally.
And so just trying to at the same time figure out what do I need to be propagating now, even if I don't know, well, it's going in that spot. I know it's going in that area sometime in the next couple of years, and I need to get some plants started.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of that kind of design going on too, and a lot of evolution. Like, I think in the last year, we've developed a much clearer view of what we want this farm to be.
Yeah.
Once we finally got through with the house building and really talked through what are the things that bring us joy out here, and how do we want to share this with other people.
Yeah.
Right? Because for both Jeremy and I, we enjoy, opening up and entertaining and having people enjoy the space that we've created, but not randomly every day dropping in. So like a classic you pick would drive us insane.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And so coming through those evolutions has been important for the design too.
Yeah, that's awesome. So. I can definitely tell that based on the last time I was here, I can tell that there's just a lot more, like, things are just, like, more established, and, like, this is what we're doing now, where, and it does take a few years, and it's important to take that time to, especially when you're working with this land, to take that time and be like, all right, this is what we want to do. Is this what we want to do? Like,
exactly.
Making sure to ask those questions and, like, continue to have those conversations.
No, that's huge.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm excited for the U-Pick. I will be here.
Well, awesome.
Yeah, can't wait.
Yeah,
it's gonna be great. I think like the agriturismo or the that kind of sector is something that is really, really neat, and I think is not utilized very often, at least in this area, and at least in the U.S. very often.
Yep.
I know when I was abroad, it was like everywhere all the time, especially in Italy. It was like wineries and olive oils, and there's like olive mills and like community mills and just like pasta and like who knows, the whole thing.
Right.
And it was like all of it was agriturismo, and it was like, oh my gosh, that's a lot, where I feel like we're kind of on the come up of that, and it's great to see that starting, because
I think so.
It's a really easy way to, one, get the community involved, which is something that needs to happen more.
Definitely.
And also just like, it can help supply funds for the farm. It can get more community involved, and
definitely.
The whole texture of all of that is really, really cool.
Right.
And especially it also just like helps out with the farm, and like U-Picks can help, so then you don't have to be harvesting 70 plus walnut trees or whatever.
Right.
It's like, why not bring people out to help us? That's that's why you wanted to create it in the first place.
Absolutely.
That's really cool. Yeah. So moving forward, how do you think people like in the community and in town can get more involved within different like regenerative projects that are going on in the community, just like from their home, whether they're in an apartment or not, or this or that? Like, how do you see that like happening for the average Joe?
In this specific community, there are a lot of really good organizations. Like, I love the Sunrise Project.
Yeah, me too.
And all of the growing food, growing health work they do with a million organizations. And so if you are a person who has a place to grow food but is not able to, or wants help learning how, then they're awesome.
Yeah.
If you want to go grow food somewhere and you don't have space, then they're awesome.
Yeah.
Right? And so definitely highly recommend them.
Yeah.
Lawrence also has the Common Ground program, which is fabulous. So for connecting with community gardens, to start small, or if you're already ready to grow a bigger garden, getting access to more property without having to pay $10,000 for a lot in Lawrence.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Is pretty awesome.
Totally.
I think, KPI definitely offers events and things. We do a lot more than gardening, though.
Yeah.
So it depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, we definitely do education, and we definitely allow you to connect with other people that are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But we don't have a good, direct mentorship program. There are internship type opportunities available on farms around. I know that I connect a variety of my students to those. I have several interns here, like we were talking earlier, who are helping do things and are learning about the systems on this farm and the things that we're growing here and how to grow them in a hands-on way several times a week.
Yeah.
And so those things are out there.
Yeah.
The biggest thing, though, is really just start.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it's a tomato in a pot by the front door or on the patio, start.
Yeah. Give it a shot.
Just try growing something.
Yeah.
And you might surprise yourself. I killed every plant I'd ever grown until I got out of college.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm a farmer now.
Yeah.
Right? Anyone can do it.
Yeah.
It is possible.
Yeah. And it's that growing that relationship,
It is.
I've done the same thing, it's like I used to, it wasn't horrible, but, I've definitely killed a lot of plants in my day, all of us have.
Yep.
It's not all just, rainbows and butterflies.
No.
Or, lovely tall stalks of corn, sometimes
exactly.
they fall over and the squirrels get to it. Shoot.
Exactly.
Next year, you know.
You just start.
Yeah.
Or learn to do some of your own things. Learn to sew a button. Learn to patch jeans.
Yeah.
Learn to cook if you're not someone that cooks a lot. Like, all of those things are important if you want to live more regeneratively and sustainably. Mm-hmm. Right? It's all part of each of us ultimately taking responsibility for our footprint on the earth. And taking that responsibility directly by doing the things ourselves.
Yeah.
So there's a million places to start.
Yeah.
Everyone can do something.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree. And I've had some friends reach out to me and ask, how can I start this garden? How can I do this and that? And it's like, I can give you so much information, but at the end of the day, just, go buy a pepper plant. Even Sunrise was giving away free plants.
Yeah. Yep.
It is possible. Check
Definitely.
on Facebook Marketplace. Facebook Marketplace is a really great place to check.
Yeah.
For just, anything. And it's just put it in the ground and see what happens.
Exactly. Just pay attention to it.
Get some grass out of the way and you'll be fine.
Yep. Mulch.
Yeah.
Lots of mulch.
Mulch
Always
is
mulch.
the best. Yeah. It's great for so many things.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So since you've been here within the prairie in Kansas, what is one of your favorite prairie moments here?
Oh, goodness.
It's a big question because there's so many great moments here.
Yes. I think about prairie as the grasslands, but it's actually in the sky. So Jeremy and I were last fall walking around on that ridge, figuring out where we were going to put the swales. We were literally pacing off and had flags everywhere and trying to figure it out. And we looked up and there was a pair of bald eagles.
Cool.
That were just soaring in the updraft on the hill, just doing circles around us, 2 of them.
Yeah.
And it was just like one of those, wow.
Yeah.
Just wow.
Uh-huh.
We just stood there and watched bald eagles play in the wind for a while.
Yeah.
That's got to be up there. I don't know if it is the best, but that's got to be up there.
Yeah, that's magical for sure.
Yeah.
I usually don't see very many pairs of bald eagles, so that's
what, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
A family? Keep your nest safe,
Exactly.
We love you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh,
wow,
so
that's so
beautiful.
cool.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
So.
And fall is such a good time of year around here, I think.
Yeah.
It's finally calmed down after the heat of the summer. You know, it's things are steady again.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Really, really cool. Great. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks for talking with me.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Yeah. So, ways to connect with you, Windstone Farms on Facebook and Instagram.
Yep.
Awesome.
Windstonefarms.net.
Cool.
So it is a .net, not a .com.
Cool.
And then it's Windstone_Farms on Instagram.
Awesome.
And Windstone Farms on Facebook.
Great. Hopefully our listeners can check you out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you want to email, windstonefarmskansas@gmail.
Great.
Is us.
Awesome. Well, lovely. This has been great. Thanks. Hey folks, and thanks for getting to the end of this podcast, and thanks for tuning in today. I really enjoyed curating this and having this conversation with Amber. I think it was very informative, and it contained a lot of really awesome information, and I'm really glad that we're getting the chance to share this with the interwebs of the community. And so thanks for tuning in. You can find me on Instagram at Prairie Ramblings, and leave us a review if you feel inclined to do so. Tell your grandma, tell your friend, tell your teacher, talk to your cat about it. Let's get the community involved in this conversation that we're having. If you're listening to this and would like to have a conversation with me, please feel free to reach out. And Instagram is probably the best mode to contact me at this point in time. So stay tuned, and I will see you in probably about a month for the next episode here on Prairie Ramblings. Thank you, and have a lovely day.